Welcome to Tales from the Dark Side, hosted by me, best-selling author Conrad Jones. Tonight, the door creaks open, the lights grow dim, and you are invited into the shadows. Beyond this point lie disturbing events, twisted mysteries, and tales soaked in horror, some true, some even truer. Stories that crawl beneath your skin, whisper in the dark, and leave you questioning just how fragile your grip on reality really is. So grab yourself a brew, lock the doors, and listen carefully. Because once the darkness descends, it may never leave. This is Tales from the Dark Side, and the nightmares are only just beginning.
This episode contains reference to violence and sexual violence.
Reading from The Priest and the Devil, Chapter 6. Dave Simmons had spent enough nights chasing ghosts to know that most of the hunts were disappointingly ordinary. A creaking floorboard, a draft through a badly fitted window, a shadow caught in the corner of someone's eye that turned out to be a coat hanging on a door. Banging pipes down to bad plumbing, scratching down to rodents or bats. People wanted monsters. They wanted demons, spirits, things that crawled out of the dark. They wanted proof that there was something beyond the world they could see, which would indicate there was something else after death. Dave had built a career on finding the things that people didn't want to see. But the memory stick Pat had handed him 3 hours earlier was different. There was no obvious explanation for what that was, apart from very bad people who had found each other and met to do very bad things. No trick of the light, no misunderstanding, and no rational answer that made him feel better, just darkness. A room and people doing something that should never have been recorded. The murder of terrified men and women. Rain hammered against the windows of Dave's flat in Old Swan, Liverpool, as he sat hunched over his laptop. The only light in the room came from the screen and the flickering glow of a cheap lamp he kept on his desk. The lamp had been a gift from Pat, the landlord of the Paraffin lamp pub. Pat claimed it had been in the pub since the building opened, claimed it had survived everything the old place had thrown at it. Fires, floods, break-ins, arguments between drunken locals that ended with police cars outside. Dave wasn't sure about the history, but he liked the lamp. It had character. Tonight, though, the flame seemed to move differently, almost like it was reacting to what he was watching. He clicked the file again. The video loaded and the screen went black. Then came the sound, the low humming. At first, Dave thought it was interference, but after a few seconds, he realised it was voices. A group of people chanting. The memory stick had dozens of ritual events recorded on different devices, cameras and phones probably. This scene was filmed with a cheap camera. The quality was poor, grainy. The image jumped every few seconds, as if whoever had filmed it was trying to hide what they were doing. A basement, or maybe an old cellar. The walls were damp and covered in strange markings, candles surrounded, a shape drawn on the floor. Dave leaned closer to get a better view. He had seen symbols before. He had spent years researching occult groups, folklore, and alleged hauntings. Most of what people call satanic was nothing more than teenagers looking for attention. This wasn't that. The people in the video weren't playing, they weren't pretending, they were terrified. The person holding the camera breathed heavily, trying to stay quiet. Then the figure in the centre of the room stepped forward. A man wearing a black robe, his face covered by a devil mask. Dave felt the hairs on his arms rise. The ritual continued. The chanting became louder. The person lying in the centre of the symbol began to struggle. Dave paused the video. His stomach tightened because he knew what was coming. He had watched it once already, and he had hoped he had misunderstood, but he hadn't. He took a deep breath and sipped his whiskey and pressed play. A black woman approached the star with an axe in hand. She swung it 3 times and chopped off his left foot. The victim screamed as she raised it again and swung at his other leg, catching him below the knee. It took 4 more blows to sever the limb completely. She took each of his limbs, one at a time, and placed them around the star. He was still screaming when she severed his head. The sound was distorted by the poor recording, but still cut through him. The people around the circle didn't move. They watched. They encouraged it. Then the video ended with no explanation, no aftermath, just a final image of a decapitated body lying motionless beneath candlelight. The head was in the centre of the circle, the tongue lolling on the chin. Dave sat back slowly and sighed, wiping perspiration from his brow with the back of his hand. For years he had investigated claims of hauntings in abandoned buildings around Merseyside. He had walked through condemned houses at 3 a.m. with cameras and recording equipment. He had slept in supposedly haunted rooms. He had spoken to people who claimed that they were possessed. Most were scared. Some were confused. Some needed help. Others were just fucking mental. But this was real. Murder disguised as something else, and the worst part was that Pat had not shown him the memory stick because he thought it was interesting. He had shown him because he was frightened. The Paraffin lamp had always been a strange place. Old pubs carried history in their walls, stories built up over generations. But recently, Pat had been telling Dave about strange things happening nearby. Footsteps down the stairs when the pub was empty. Cold spots. Customers complaining about seeing a man standing near the old cellar door, a figure watching. David dismissed most of it and given Pat reasonable explanations, until Pat had mentioned St. Jude's, the presbytery at the old church. St. Oswald's, just a few 100 yards away from the pub. There had been rumours, whispers, people saying something was happening there, and then a few years back during lockdown, a satanic cult was unearthed beneath neighbouring Brick Street, number 44 specifically. But he thought they were all arrested and locked up. Dave had heard about the police activity but hadn't known the details. Now he wondered if the two things were connected, or were the people on the memory card gathering sick content from the internet, or had they created it and filmed it themselves? He removed the memory stick and stared at it, a small piece of plastic holding terrible secrets. He knew what he had to do. Give it to the police. The rain was heavier by the time Dave left his flat. Liverpool looked different at night. The streets he knew during the day became unfamiliar. Shadows stretched beneath streetlights. Water ran along the pavements like black veins. The city seemed quieter, as though everyone had gone indoors and locked the world outside. Dave walked quickly. The memory stick was in his jacket pocket. He kept checking it was still there. Ridiculous, he thought, as if someone was going to steal it from him. But after seeing that video, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was carrying something dangerous. Not physically dangerous, something worse, something evil, a collection of evil. Evidence of murders, multiple murders, all on one memory stick. The close he got to St. Jude's, the more uneasy he became. The house was beside the church, stood in darkness behind the police cordon. Blue lights flashed through the rain, reflecting off the wet road. Uniformed officers stood nearby, keeping people back. There were already rumours spreading, but there always were. Someone had died, someone was murdered. 2 CSI vans means trouble. Something terrible had happened and everybody wanted to know what. Dave approached the cordon and an officer immediately stepped forward. "Can I help you, sir?" Dave looked past him towards the scene. "I need to speak to whoever's in charge," Dave said. "Are you related to the church in some way?" "No." "Are you press?" "No." "Do you have information?" "I think so." Dave hesitated. "I don't know if it's relevant, but I have something that needs to be seen." "What needs to be seen?" The officer frowned. "I have a memory stick." Dave looked at the church, the alcohol dulling his senses. The dark windows stared back. "I think it may be important for the investigation." "It was hidden in the pub at the end of the street." Dave pointed. "It has some satanic content on it and several murders." "Satanic content and murders?" The officer's expression changed slightly. "Yes. I don't know what happened here, what you're investigating, but I think what is on this memory stick is related." Dave nodded. "I think what's on it might help explain what's happened here." "What's your name?" The officer reached for his radio. "Dave Simmons." "Stay there, Mr. Simmons." Dave waited. The rain soaked through his jacket. Water ran down his face, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed fixed on St. Jude's. There was something about the building, something old, not haunted, not in the way people imagined, but old, like it had been decomposing. A few minutes later, a man approached. Dave thought he recognised him, but then his brain kicked in. The man looked like Gordon Ramsay. Dave loved kitchen nightmares. Detective Alec Ramsey approached. Dave recognised him from news reports. The senior investigating officer was calm and controlled, the type of person who had seen too much to be shocked easily. "You're Dave Simmons?" Ramsey asked. "Yes." "The paranormal investigator?" Alec asked. "Yes," Dave gave him a small smile, "although it depends on who you ask." "I've read a couple of your books, entertaining stuff," Alec said. "Thank you. I'm glad you have an open mind, considering why I'm here." The officer said you may have something related to our investigation. Ramsey ignored the comment. Dave nodded. "What have you got?" Dave looked around as if it was a secret. Everything there seemed normal. The rain, the church, the police. Then he removed the memory stick from his pocket. This was hidden beneath a table in the pub at the end of the road. It was stuck next to a carved 9-angled star beneath the table. "Okay, when was this?" Alec asked. "Tonight. They found it while they were cleaning chewing gum from beneath the tables. Pat gave this to me." "Who's Pat?" Alec asked. "He's the landlord from the Paraffin lamp." "Do you have an image of the carving it was next to?" Ramsey took the memory stick and frowned, but didn't put it away. "Yes, here." Dave showed him the photographs on his phone. "I'll need copies there." Alec looked Dave in the eyes. "What's on that memory stick that makes it so important you have walked through the pissing down rain to give it to me?" "Satanic rituals, dozens of them." Dave swallowed hard. "There are murders on there as well." "Murders?" The detective's face remained unreadable. "Can you explain further?" "I watched it at home tonight. It shows rituals, a group of people wearing masks. They're doing something satanic involving sex, symbols, and murder." each time the person in the middle of the star is killed. To be clear, Alex said, are you saying you watched dozens of murders on this memory stick? Yes, Dave looked down. I watched them several times. I needed to be sure. Sure of what? Alec asked. That I wasn't looking at something fake. Okay. Ramsey stared at him. And what did you decide? It all looks real to me. Dave looked back towards the church. I'm not sure what's worse. That it's real, he paused, or that I think it's connected to this place, and others locally. You recognise some of the places? Alex said. The detective looked towards St. Jude's. Yeah, some of them look familiar. Familiar how? The walls, the stonework, markings, street layouts. His voice lowered. I think some of the rituals happened near here and around here. Okay. For the first time, Ramsey's expression changed. Not fear, not disbelief, but interest. Someone recorded a number of murders and left evidence in the pub. For what reason, do you think? I'm not sure, Dave said. Like pedos swapping content on the internet, but this way is untraceable. Dave looked at the memory stick. I think they recorded it because they wanted someone to collect it from the pub, but it was found before they got there. Alec looked confused. I've seen posts on the darknet. They use footage from their orgies to recruit new members and new victims. Sex is a powerful magnet, especially for vulnerable people. The rain fell harder. For a moment, neither man spoke. I think that was left under the table to entice somebody into the cult. Then a gust of wind moved through the trees surrounding the church. The police lights flickered across the old stone walls, and Dave had the strangest feeling that someone inside St. Jude's was listening, waiting. You'll need to come with me, Ramsey said. Where to? Dave asked. To the station. I'm going to need a full statement. Once we watch this memory stick together, you can tell me where you think the locations are. Okay, Dave nodded. As they walked away, he looked back one last time. The church stood silent, but just before he turned away, he thought he saw movement behind one of the upstairs windows. A group of figures standing perfectly still, watching him leave. Dave stopped, took a picture. Is something wrong? Alec Ramsey asked. Dave stared at the window. The glass was black, empty, nothing there. No, he said quietly, just a trick of the light. But he didn't believe himself, because whatever was happening around St. Jude's had already begun hundreds of years ago. And he could sense it, that this was ancient and powerful and evil.
Looking for your next dark obsession? Best-selling thriller author Conrad Jones has gripped over 3 million readers worldwide, with 38 brutal, fast-paced thrillers across 6 explosive series. From serial killers to organised crime and psychological terror, these books don't let you go. Search Conrad Jones on Amazon today, if you dare.
Chapter 7. Megan Forster stood beneath the shower long after the water had gone cold. She barely noticed. Her hands moved automatically. Wash, rinse, repeat. Her mind was somewhere else, back in Tesco, back in that aisle, back in front of Nick Vincent and his disgusting friend Damien. The memory of them replayed endlessly. They had forced her and others to drink wine laced with Rohypnol, and then everything became blurry. But she knew she had been involved in a sexual ritual each time. It happened many times during their relationship, and she despised herself for allowing the abuse to happen. She buried the memories deep in her subconscious, but seeing them had dragged them back to the surface. His smile, his voice, the way he'd known where they lived, and the fact he knew about Elliot terrified her. She wasn't sure who was the father. It had been easier to cope with, but the certainty in his eyes was unnerving. She shut her eyes tightly, but it made no difference. He was still there, waiting, watching. 7 years earlier, after the trial, a specialist had diagnosed her with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. The nightmares and panic attacks, the hypervigilance and fear were debilitating. Years of therapy had helped, years of hard work, years spent rebuilding a life that Nick Vincent had almost destroyed, and then in less than 5 minutes he had ripped it all apart. The progress she had made, the confidence and the normality was all gone. She leaned her forehead against the tiles, her entire body trembled. Someone knocked gently on the bathroom door. "Megan?" Her mother's voice was soft and worried. Megan cleared her throat. "I'm okay." The lie sounded pathetic. "Don't make a fuss, Mum." "Come downstairs." A pause followed. And then, "Your daddy's here." Megan closed her eyes. Of course he was. "Please tell me you didn't call me Dad." "I had to, Megan." "No, Mum, you didn't have to." "He needs to know what's gone on." Megan sighed heavily. The last thing she wanted was attention. The last thing she wanted was everyone treating her like she was broken again. But she knew her mother. Once frightened, she gathered family the way people gathered sandbags before a flood. "Megan?" "What?" "Your brother's here too," her mum said. Megan groaned. "Oh, fucking brilliant." And then silence. "Megan, and I called Philip as well." Megan stared at the bathroom ceiling. "Of course." Mum had called Philip. Philip was her boyfriend. The entire rescue committee had been assembled. She wrapped a towel around herself and stepped towards the mirror. Steam blurred her reflection. Even so, she could see the old tattoo scars where she had had them removed by laser. It was painful and slow. All the satanic symbols were gone now. Faint burn marks remained, and so did the nightmares. Nick had forced her to the rituals, sometimes drugged with Rohypnol, sometimes drunk. Her senses were numbed, but she knew what they had done to her. She was forced to take part in their orgies, often fought by several men at once, all wearing masks. It would take weeks for the bruises to fade. When she complained and begged him not to take her there again, he beat her so badly she spent 5 days in the Royal Hospital. There was a slight bend in her nose where he had kicked her in the face. The thing most people claimed they barely noticed. She noticed it every day, every time she looked in a mirror, every time she woke up screaming at night. She remembered. Nick had given her that broken nose as a permanent reminder, a signature of his power. For years she stopped seeing it, and Philip had helped with that. He treated her as though none of her scars mattered, as though she wasn't damaged. But now Nick Vincent was out of prison. She feared for their future. All she could see was the broken woman Nick Vincent had left behind 8 years ago. The woman she'd spent years trying not to become. She dressed quickly in jeans and an oversized jumper. Nothing fitted or tight, nothing that drew attention. She avoided the black leggings folded neatly in her wardrobe. Nick Vincent used to love those. He said it made her bum look sexy, and she knew what that meant. She hated anal sex, but he preferred it. The thought of him touching her made her skin crawl. She felt physically sick. 10 minutes later, she walked down the stairs. The moment she entered the living room, every conversation stopped and everyone looked at her. Her father, her brother, Philip, and her mother. The sight nearly broke her because she knew exactly what they were thinking. Fear, worry and helplessness. The same expressions she had seen 7 years ago. Her father stood first. Without saying a word, he crossed the room and hugged her tightly. For a moment she resisted, and then everything collapsed. The tears came instantly, hot, uncontrollable. She buried her face against his chest and cried, not just for herself, but for all of them. For every sleepless night, every police interview, every hospital visit, every lie she had told to protect them. Every moment Nick Vincent had stolen from their lives. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. When the tears finally subsided, Megan stepped back. Her mother wiped her own eyes. Philip looked devastated. Her brother Jack looked furious, and that worried her the most. "Tea, everyone?" her mother asked quietly. Nobody answered. Megan almost laughed. The question felt absurd, yet somehow perfectly British. Philip stood and embraced her gently. Unlike her father, he didn't squeeze, didn't try to fix anything. He simply held her. "So sorry," he whispered. "Don't be sorry." Megan shook her head. "It's not your fault." But she appreciated the gesture more than she could say. "How did he get out of prison?" her brother asked. Jack was 32 and built like a rugby prop forward. Normally cheerful, normally impossible to offend, but not tonight. She could see he was deeply upset. Megan sat down. It's an early release scheme by the government to make room in prisons, apparently. The room fell silent. Jack blinked. They released Nick Vincent because of the Labour Party's fuck-ups. Apparently. That's insane, her mother snorted. Insane doesn't begin to cover it. He should never have been released, her father said. He shouldn't have been allowed to breathe fresh air again, Megan's father nodded grimly. No one disagreed. The room grew quiet. "I'm not having him frightening you," Jack spoke again. "I'll find him and sort him out face to face." "Are you mad?" Megan looked up sharply. "No, you will not. You will not go near him." "I'm not having this." Jack folded his arms. "He's threatened you. He always threatens people. That's what he does." "Then somebody should stop him," Philip added. "No." Her voice came out louder than intended. Everyone stared at her. Megan leaned forward. "Now listen to me." She frowned. "He isn't some pub bully. He's connected to child exploitation, people trafficking, drugs, prostitution, and God knows what else. They are hardcore gangsters. He's a killer and all his friends are killers too. Do you understand me?" "I know that he's connected, but," Phil began. "No, you don't know anything," she snapped. "Do not think that I need you to become a big tough guy, because I do not. I need you to be peaceful and calm and the beautiful person I fell in love with. I've seen enough anger and violence to last me a lifetime. Aggression makes me want to puke." The room fell silent, and the fear inside her suddenly boiled over. Years of memories surfaced. Things she'd never fully described, things she'd never wanted her family to know, because knowing meant imagining them, and imagining them meant carrying them with her forever. "You think he's just a violent man who beats women?" Nobody spoke. "He's not. He's so much more worse than that." Jack shifted uncomfortably. Megan continued. "Nick Vincent enjoys hurting people." The words felt poisonous. "He doesn't get angry. He doesn't lose control. He's cool, calm, and calculated. He's a criminal near the top of his tree, and he's killed people. Lots of people." She paused to think of her words carefully. "He told me about a man from Bootle who was sleeping with his ex-girlfriend. When Nick Vincent found out, he kidnapped the man, took him to an abandoned warehouse where they nailed his penis and testicles to a workbench before setting the building on fire." "Oh my God," her mum gasped. "He made his ex-girlfriend watch him burn before knocking out all her new turkey teeth with a lump hammer. She shook her head. He's a real psychopath, totally insane, and that's what makes him dangerous. Megan shook her head. I have never told you of the places that man took me to and the things I had to do. Evil things, sick things, things that haunt my sleep and my waking thoughts. What are you talking about? Her father asked, frowning. What things? Are you talking about the tattoos you had? Her mother asked. Yes, he's a member of a satanic cult, the Order of 9 Angels. He made me go with him and join their ceremonies. I was scared to death of him and the others there. I still am. I've seen things that would blow your mind, evil things that I can't explain. But that man is darker than the pits of hell, and he's respected by those people, the powerful people. You can't get involved with fighting with him in any way, shape or form. She wept and shook her head. You cannot fight this man. You cannot win. They should never have let him out of jail, her mother said again. Her father lowered his gaze. Philip stared at the floor. Megan continued. He plans everything that he does. Nobody moved. He thinks about it. The room felt colder. He enjoys making people fear him. Jack's confidence visibly faded. For the first time that evening, someone was actually listening. Megan looked directly at him. If you confront him, he won't back down. He'll come after you. Jack swallowed. Megan's voice became almost a whisper. And if he can't hurt you, she paused. The memory of Tesco flashed through her mind. The smile and threat, the certainty in his eyes. He'll hurt somebody you love instead. Nobody argued after that. Nobody joked. Nobody talked about teaching Nick Vincent a lesson because suddenly they understood. Not completely, but enough. A heavy silence settled across the room. Finally, Philip spoke. Have you told the police? Megan hesitated and shook her head. You need to, you know. I know, she said. You must tell the police, her father nodded. Nick has breached the order. He'll know that I reported him, she said. And what? Megan looked away. How could she explain it? Most people saw police involvement as protection. Nick saw it as a challenge, a reason, an excuse. The room fell silent again. Then her mother entered carrying a tray of mugs, tea, coffee, biscuits that nobody would eat. Normal things, ordinary things, things that belong to ordinary lives, lives they no longer had. As everyone reached for their drinks, Megan glanced towards the living room window. Darkness filled the street outside. Nothing moved, no cars, no pedestrians, no shadows. Yet a terrible thought settled into her mind. Nick had spent 7 years planning, 7 years waiting. And if he'd already found her once, how long would it take him to find her again? Megan wrapped both hands around her mug, trying to stop them shaking, trying to ignore the feeling growing in her chest. The certainty that this wasn't over, it was only just beginning. Darkness had touched her soul during those rituals. Real darkness, evil darkness, and it was black. I have to go away for a while and I'm going to take Helen with me. Thank you for listening to the Tales of the Dark Side by me, Conrad Jones.
You've been listening to Tales from the Dark Side with best-selling author Conrad Jones. This podcast is produced by me, Laura Raymond, with music from Stanley T. Jones. Find links to Conrad Jones's books and his Amazon page in the show notes of this podcast or search on Amazon.